Hi, Ivana. Thanks so much for being here and for your time. I really appreciate it, and I hope this helps other people with HS. I just wanted to start off with asking you about your HS experience and how old you were when you first started experiencing symptoms and your journey from that to where you are now.
Absolutely. So when I first got HS, I was in middle school. I was in sixth grade, and it was a few months, I believe, after I started my first period. And so it was a very confusing time. I got a boil under my right armpit. It was just one huge, I don't know if you call it a cyst, a boil, or what it was, but it appeared as kind of like a golf ball size boil. It might have been a little bit bigger than that. And so I just woke up one day and I had a boil out of nowhere. And throughout middle school, I can't really tell you how rapidly it progressed from month to month, but I do know by the time I got to high school, my whole body was covered. From my armpits to my breasts, to my groins, to my buttocks, to my stomach, my back. It was really difficult, especially as an adolescent going into my teens with such a horrendous condition, because I was just getting to know my body and I was so excited about becoming a woman. And that was like my introduction into womanhood. And so it was really, really difficult for me. And I still feel like I deal with a lot of that trauma still, because through that time to now, I've had to put myself on what I call autopilot in order to get through my life and actually do the things that I want to do, and to actually have a life that I want. So going to school, building relationships with friends, building a career, things like that. I've had to go and put all of that stuff in a filing cabinet in my brain so that I could push through. And so there have been moments in my life where I feel like it's all come unraveled for me, but I'm starting to get a hold on it now. And so when I was in high school, that was sort of the peak of me having HS. I was stage 3 at that point. And I guess the beauty in it all was my mom worked for healthcare. And so she actually found this newsletter in her email that she never looks at, but something told her to look at it this one particular day. And there was a clinical trial at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, Michigan. And it was at the HS clinic, the Hidradenitis Suppurativa clinic at Henry Ford New Center 1 building. It was a Fat Hamzavi, name he goes by. And so we went to this clinical trial and they diagnosed me officially with HS. So I went from sixth grade to, I want to say, the beginning of ninth grade, not being diagnosed. So physicians told me I had MRSA. They told me I had a blood disorder. They told me I was going to die. It was too much. I was like, I'm a child. I was like, for you to sit here and tell me that I have a flesh-eating bacteria disease, or that I have a blood disorder, or I'm going to die in a couple months, I'm confused, And it was hard to take in, because I was in and out of the hospital prior to that because I was overweight. I was about 300 pounds or so. And by high school, I was 350. So I was overweight. I was pre-diabetic. I was already having issues with my bladder and some other things going on with my body. So I was always in and out of the hospital. So it was a regular routine. And I was really exhausted with it at this point. But when I met Dr. Hamzavi, he told me about this clinical trial with antibiotics. I'm not a fan of antibiotics because they didn't work. I had a very aggressive form of HS, and I didn't feel like I saw any changes because HS isn't a bacterial issue, right? So I went on that clinical trial, and it was the start of a relationship with Dr. Hamzavi, because he became my dermatologist from that moment on up until a decade, I would say. So I've known him for a very long time, and he's treated me for a while now. And so through that process, I actually eventually got into another clinical trial that had to do with lasers. It was called a YAG laser. And so it was kind of like the lasers they use to remove hair off your body. And so they would zap my wounds to kind of lower the inflammation and see if they could heal them. And so we saw some, help with that, but nothing really happened. I didn't really see anything like any major differences. It might have lowered inflammation, but I was still getting boils. I still had open wounds, and it was still just a horrendous condition to deal with. So I would wake up every morning and like my underwear would be soaked and my shirts would be soaked, and it was a lot. So when I went to college, I took a month like off before all of my, not a month, but a semester before all my friends went. So I went to college late. And so when I went, I used it as a time to reinvent myself.
Okay.
And so at that time, I started just changing my diet. So I changed how much I ate, then I changed what I ate, and then I started exercising, and I saw weight fall off, and then I started seeing my HS get better. And so that was over the course of like 2.5 years. So I became a vegan vegetarian. And by the time I was a sophomore going into my junior year, I got a full ride scholarship to go back to Detroit to study journalism, because I went to Kalamazoo, Michigan at Western Michigan University to study communications. And so by the time I got my scholarship, I had done like a juice fast for two weeks, like a week and a half to 2 weeks. And by the time I went home, the wounds on my breast, the wounds on my back, and on my sides had completely healed with no surgery.
Wow.
And so I did that. And at that point, I was a complete vegan. And I had kind of started back my bad habits after I moved back home, just like little by little. I didn't eat meat again, but I did introduce dairy back into my diet, which was the plague eventually, like 2 years later, 2 or 3 years later. And so I got surgery with Dr. Hamzavi again. He put me in a clinical trial when I came back home for something called CO2 laser.
Mm-hmm.
And so the CO2 laser, I had the HS all in this area and all in this area. So I think they started with this arm, and they extracted all the top of my skin. And then they went in and burned the tracks and sewed them up and things like that. And so they left the wound open to heal, and it closed on its own. And I had like gauze and Vaseline to help with the healing process.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I got that done, and that took almost a year to heal because it was the first time. And it was actually wonderful for me to get the surgery at that time, because I had a lot of collagen in my skin because of my diet change and all of that other stuff. So I was a great candidate. My stage 3 HS went to like probably stage 2 or less at that point.
Wow.
And so then I got that surgery, and then after it healed, I talked about getting the next surgery. And so that one was a lot easier because we knew what we were doing. Like my mom was my caregiver throughout all of my whole time that I've had HS. And so she helped me to kind of like go through the second one. And so that one healed in less time. It healed in like 6 months instead of a year. And then I got another surgery on my stomach and then my thigh with the CO2 laser. And those healed good. I did get plastic surgery in the groin area, and that was the worst experience I've had because they removed some of it, but they botched that area. So I still have HS in that area, and I'm going to have to get reconstruction surgery. And so I was very eager to get surgery just in general. And so I didn't really think about who was doing the surgery, how much experience they had in doing the surgery, were they right for me? And I just rushed into it. And so I am doing a healing process from that trauma now because I'm having to tell myself, like, it's not your fault. You know what I mean? You did what was good, what you thought was good for you at the time, right? So I did that surgery, and around that time, I was kind of eating foods that I wasn't supposed to again, eating dairy. I was introducing seafood back into my diet, and, you know, seafood didn't really have an effect when I introduced it, but the dairy did. The dairy didn't show up and start messing with my body until like, I would say like a year or two later. And so that was like 2018. And I got one of the biggest boils that I've had for like 3 years. And that was like in the groin area, in like the buttock area. And I couldn't walk at all. I was bedridden for 2.5 weeks. I had a fever. I couldn't eat. I didn't even want to walk. I didn't even want to look at anything. I just wanted to sleep all day. I was sick. And when I got the boil lanced, it was great, but it hurt. And unfortunately, I had a very nice doctor, but the nurse was very insensitive to my situation. And so through that process, I came to LA to go to grad school. And I came to get my degree in specialized journalism arts at the University of Southern California. And so during that time, I made the decision for my master's thesis to do a documentary on HS. And so I produced and directed that. And throughout that period of time, I got reconnected to my diet because I got connected to these naturopathic physicians in Colorado. Their practice is called Attune Functional Medicine, Bisco and Dr. Egeland. And so through talking to them and kind of watching some of their programming on YouTube, they helped me to understand how diet does affect or can affect HS. And so I started being a little bit more cautious. You know, I can still be more cautious now, but that really helped to slow down a lot of that inflammation that I had. So I took dairy completely back out of my diet. I found out soy can have a lot to do with my HS because I probably already have a lot of estrogen in my body. So to add that extra estrogen is probably throwing things off. So I try to stay away from soy. I try to stay away from processed foods. The only processed foods I do eat are vegan. In those, I try to have like very little like ingredients. So like, you know, very natural, very little ingredients in them. And so now currently, I would say that I'm probably like stage 2 or 1, between like 2 and 1 right now, because I still have it aggressively in my buttock area and I still have it somewhat in my groin area. But every place else I've been fine. So yeah, that's kind of where I am now.
That's fantastic. That's some story. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. And in particular, your surgery experience and kind of just jumping at the plastic surgery. I have definitely done that before. I've had a lot of surgeries and I would definitely look back in hindsight and think probably should have gotten a second opinion on some of these. But you live and you learn, I suppose. And I think nowadays there's so much more information available and there's so much support as well from other people with HS that we can recommend surgeons to each other and recommend physicians, and it's lovely. I've met Dr. Hamzavi and I think he's wonderful, so I know that you're in good hands there, so that's great. It's great to hear. So what advice would you have for anyone struggling with their HS?
The advice I would have for people struggling with their HS is that it's not the end. And I think that we have to trust ourselves and empower ourselves through this process. It's very difficult. I struggle with depression and anxiety very badly. And like before, you know, me getting dolled up today, I had been in bed and I hadn't washed, I haven't done my hair for about 2 or 3 days. You know what I mean? So you have to take it one day at a time. You have to do what you feel is right for you at the moment. And it's difficult. It's difficult to be present. That's the number one thing, because being present in your body means that you have to realize the fact that you have HS. And then if you don't have the tools to just dissect that and to really process the fact that you're living with this skin condition and that it feels like your body is attacking you, then you can go into an avoidance cycle, you know. At least that's my experience with just me. I go into this cycle where I'm just like, oh, I want to do something to avoid my feelings. And then it's something that's like, I probably shouldn't do. So then I feel bad. And then I go back into this cycle over and over.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, I've adopted a lot of modality, like healing modalities, a lot of metaphysical healing modalities. I use yoga, Reiki, meditation, sound baths, binaural beats. I do a lot of writing in the sense of like, I'm a journalist. So I write in that. I've never been good at journaling. My parents, like my therapist, have always asked me like, you should journal your thoughts. And I'm just like, I don't like the process of journaling for some reason. And I've never have. I mean, it probably would have benefited me to like chronicle my story, like through like when I was a child to now, but I didn't have the capacity to do that. So I just have to like live with that. But for HS patients, I would just say like, especially if you want to have a career and you want to have like friendships, you want to live your life, it's possible. I had stage 3 and I was able to do it, I would go to certain things. Like I remember I won a scholarship for general
Wow.
motors to go to the North International Auto Show. And during that time, I just had my groin surgery. And so I just got cleared by my doctor to be able to go out and to like interact. And so I still had to be careful, but I was still dealing with that surgery. I was still dealing with like the other wounds and things like that. And so it's possible. And sometimes like everybody doesn't have the support system I had either. Like I had my mom. My mom was like a pillar in my healing.
Yeah.
If I didn't have her, and she didn't really understand a lot of what I was going through emotionally, but she was there for me. And so I think that it's important to have someone with you who
Yeah.
can go through it with you, you know what I mean? Who can like care for you,
Yeah.
and who isn't going to judge you. Because my mom changed my wounds, my wound dressings.
Mm-hmm.
She saw my skin at the worst. She saw it at the best. And she didn't change her view of me, you know? And I know that everybody doesn't have that. And I know it's difficult to find, but that doesn't mean that you can't find it. It means that it's
Absolutely.
going
Yeah.
to take some work. It means it's going to take some effort, but you can do it and you can take it one day at a time. And even, you know, getting a therapist is really helpful. I'm talking to a therapist now. And before I was talking to Dr. Erin Martinez, who is a therapist who is,
Wonderful.
yeah, she's so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the distance like that, wasn't really the best for us. So I had to find another therapist, but she was amazing. And she specifically helps patients with HS. And then I know that a lot of patients try dieting and then they get discouraged. It took me 2.5 years to see results. It might not take that for everybody, but I would say if you're going through the elimination diet, it takes time. If you don't see anything in a couple months, keep going. That doesn't mean that you should stop. That just means that you should keep going to see if it'll work. Because it doesn't hurt you to continue like seeing what might be triggering your HS. You know what I mean? It doesn't take away from you as long as you're watching your nutrition levels and your intake and all that other stuff, like your vitamin intake and things like that, and water and all that other stuff. I think that you'll definitely get where you need to. And then I know that some patients don't see any success with it, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try dieting. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try anything else. That just means that particular thing didn't work. The fact that a lot of doctors don't have enough answers for HS patients, we have to take a lot of our healing into our own hands. And so empower yourself through the process. You know what I mean? Tell yourself, okay, this might not be working right now, but what else can I do? Sit down, brainstorm, because something will turn up and you will start seeing results. Don't give up on yourself. You know,
That's
don't
great
give up.
advice. Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about your movie?
We're in the process of aligning with distributors.
Okay.
And then getting some finishing funds to kind of like tighten it up a little bit, because it is a student film. So I literally didn't have a budget and I had myself. I was the crew. So
Okay.
the shooting, the editing, the producing, the directing, all of that. So the documentary is about 2 African-American women who have HS at different stages. I'm one of the women, and I had stage 3, and now I'm stage 1 and 2, or between 1 and 2. And then the other woman is a woman from Maryland, and she's a beauty influencer. Her name is Antonia Janae. She's a very wonderful, very talented makeup artist, and she actually I think she had like stage 1 or 2. And so the documentary kind of takes you through our stories, through some archival footage, pictures, and things like that, detailing when our conditions kind of like started, what the treatment we've had, and things like that. And then I bring in Dr. Hamzavi, Dr. Bisco, Dr. Eaglin, Dr. Erin Martinez to talk about more just like the science behind HS, to kind of solidify some of our own experiences as patients.
Yeah.
And so I actually also talked to my cousin who has HS. So I think that some of the HS that I'm experiencing is genetic, but I'm not positive. I don't have any like thing to, to confirm that just yet.
It's
But
a
I do know
big puzzle.
it is a big puzzle. We're all
Yeah.
trying to piece it
Piece it
together.
together. So where can anyone watching this find out more about you? Can they follow you on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube? Where is the best place to see you and the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So my personal pages are going to be Ivana Espy, which is on Facebook. So that's IVANNA and then ESPY, like Espy Awards.
Mm-hmm.
On Instagram, it's Who is Ivana? So WHOISIVANNA. And then Twitter is just, I mean, I use Twitter, but you don't necessarily have to find me on there, but it's Glenda Got Cameras. So
That's it.
it's a play on I don't know if you know the show Archer. It's a play on a joke that they had on there. But anyway,
Okay.
for my documentary, we have Facebook, Instagram, and we have Twitter, and it's My Gold Lining Doc and My Gold Lining Documentary on Facebook.
Super.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ivana. That has been a fantastic chat. I really think it's going to help a lot of people with HS. The best thing that we can do is share our stories. The more people talking about HS, the less stigmatized we'll feel, the less embarrassed we'll feel, and hopefully people will seek help and support from the HS community and from the medical community. So thank you. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you for taking the time to speak with me. And if I can say one more thing, for my ladies with HS, and I know men, I can't speak to the male experience, unfortunately, but for women, I want to let you know that you are beautiful despite what is going on with your body. We are not our skin. We are not this form completely and wholly. We are more than that. And I know that our society makes us feel like we have to be perfect, that we have to have flawless skin and flawless bodies, but trust me, you are valuable, you are loved, and you are worthy of being here in this space and in any space. Please know that. And it's bringing tears to my eyes because I'm talking to me and I'm talking to you. Because I really want you to know that. And I know it's hard because of like the programming that we've had. But you're beautiful. And I'm not just saying that, I know it.
I agree 100%. That's such a lovely message to end up on. Absolutely. So thank you for that.